So Wicked, obviously a play is different than a film, of course.
For sure.
Galinda's character is pivotal because the audience has to be like annoyed with her, upset with her behavior, not enough with her turned off, but also she has to push it or you won't buy the transformation. What was the challenge of crafting Galinda's character for that?
I think that's a great question, and honestly, it's so funny. Last night we were at a party. We had like sort of an orphan Valentine party, and we all started talking about, are you Glinda, are you Elphaba? And I was like, I'm definitely Elphaba. And all my friends were like, you're 100% Glinda. Like, what are you talking about? And I think for me, I actually felt more comfortable writing for Elphaba, and Winnie Holzman, who's the greatest of all time, I can't wait for you to talk to her. She was so good at writing Glinda. I mean, she was great at writing everything, but she just had this very specific line on Glinda, and it was amazing. And for me, what I tried to contribute to the Glinda stuff was just that feeling of a sense of complicity. Like, I remember coming up with the idea that she had to light the effigy on fire, because originally it was just like somebody lit the effigy and she was just standing there, and I was like, no, you have to make her light that fire, because you have to make her complicit in order to really, as you say, care about her journey and her transformation.
Obviously, the ballroom scene is a critical scene because Elphaba goes through a lot. She thinks she's going to be accepted.
I know.
She's rejected, but actually finally makes a connection and a friend.
Yeah.
What was your process of that scene? Because everything wrote on that scene, actually, I think, for the film.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, it's so funny. I can't watch that scene. I've seen the movie 600 times. I can't watch that scene without explosively crying. And I think for me, it's when Cynthia, who just gave so much humanity to this character and so much rawness and emotion to this character, when she walks in with that hope in her face, and she thinks she's going to have a really good night, and then the minute she sees what's going on, she realizes the whole thing was a setup. I can't watch it. It's so painful to me. So I think, honestly, that scene, we wrote it pretty simply, and yet in the finding of it, I have to give credit to the girls, to JonMChu, to Alice Brooks, the incredible DP. I think that's where they really found those moments, was in them doing it all together, and that incredible alchemy between Cynthia and Ariana, the way that they worked with each other emotionally, and they didn't prepare for that in the same way that, you rehearse things to death sometimes so that you can nail them, and Ariana didn't learn the choreography because she wanted to really be copying Cynthia in the moment. They only did a few takes, and all of that emotion that you see was really real. It was like actually happening, and it wasn't planned. So to me, I have to give credit to the rest of the team for that.
Now, obviously, you're setting up the great musical numbers because the popular song would not have worked if you didn't have the ballroom scene.
That's a great point.
When you were writing, were you thinking about that? We have to keep the drama going, but we have to set up the great musical numbers.
We were constantly thinking about the music, and I had the good fortune of doing 158 hours of Zooms with Winnie Holzman, Stephen Schwartz, and JonMChu before we ever even put pen to paper, which was like the greatest masterclass of all time. I had the time of my life. But, Stephen is so brilliant, and watching the way that his songs actually tell the entire story was really incredible, and realizing that we have to get the characters emotionally to a place at the beginning of the song that the song itself will keep telling the story. And so one of the things I tried to do is anywhere that a lyric gave me chills, I wanted to make sure, did we have the character do something before that made that lyric really land? So we constantly were trying to bolster the emotion of the music by making sure that if we added anything that wasn't in the play, it was in the service of that.
Well, Dancing Through Life is one of my favorite musicals. Would not have worked if you didn't have the Cynthia and Jonathan Bailey scene previously, setting up that real, their views that he's just a partier and she's not.
Exactly. Oh, Dancing Through Life. Jonathan Bailey, the star.
All right, so our last question. Obviously, the end was so dramatic between Cynthia and Ariana. What were your views when you saw their performance of your scripted scene of their final resolution to their relationship for the film?
Yeah, I mean, you almost as a writer never get a moment where somebody realizes a scene that you've written to that degree of expertise. Like, I mean, the first time I saw it, I missed the majority of it because I was crying so hard that I couldn't actually see the screen. The second time I saw it was when I really, really enjoyed it because I was actually able to see through my tears to watch the scene. And I think it was absolutely extraordinary the way that they teased out the very last note, because that wasn't in the play. Her ability to fly around was special to the movie. And we wanted you to touch base with some of the other characters so that you would remember where you were with them, so that, going into the second movie, you know where you are with everybody. And just the fact that that note is coming and we refuse to give it to you is like, ugh. And then, JonMChu actually deserves the credit for that incredible moment where she jumped out of the window and it breaks and she just falls, because originally she crashed out of the window and she flew. And we just sort of, he knew something wasn't quite there. And so he came up with the idea with Alice Brooks of the falling. And then I think John had the idea to have her reach out and realize it was her former self that was the one that was going to save her. Was like, I have to save that little girl. It's not about me, it's about her. And that was, I mean, I get chills talking about it. But go JonMChu.
All right, so the whole movie really hinges on Elphaba and Glinda's relationship.
That's true.
And we know the musical numbers would not have worked if you didn't pull that off. What were the biggest...
We're so grateful that we got the two most amazing women on the planet to play those parts.
So what was the challenge for Glinda specifically? We had to kind of be annoyed with her for a long time, disappointed in her, but you had to also push it far enough so the redemption meant something.
She has somewhere to go. You know, she has a lot to learn. I think they actually both have something to learn, but Glinda has a lot to learn. And it's her friendship with Elphaba that's going to teach her, a lot of hard truths. And it's going to bring her to her true self. It's going to reveal her true destiny. So, she's human.
Everything really rides on the ballroom scene. If the audience doesn't buy that scene, the film really doesn't work. What were the challenges in creating that scene, finally when they came together?
Well, interestingly, the writing of that scene is very much how it's written on stage. The difference is how John chose to shoot it, JonMChu, the amazing JonMChu, but also those two women, Ariana and Cynthia, what they brought emotionally just brought it to another level. And they were so naked and raw in that scene, and I think you can't help but be moved.
So, and what are you most excited about for the audience to see in the next film, without giving away anything?
I'm just excited because there's a lot of new stuff in the next film, so I'm excited to feel people's reactions, and I just can't wait.
The whole relationship of the movie is Elphaba, and Glinda. The movie would not work if you didn't actually build a dramatic relationship.
Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges in creating their relationship so we can accept and enjoy the musical numbers?
Well, one was finding them. Who was the right perfect Elphaba? Who was the right Glinda? They never did a chemistry read together, so we never knew. We had done chemistry with other people, but I don't know what was wrong with me, but I never paired them. And once I knew that Cynthia was Elphaba and Glinda was Glinda, like there was no other choice, and I was like, oh, I hope they get along. And they came to my house 6 months after we hired them. And it was during the COVID time, so we were in lockdown. And Stephen Schwartz and Winnie was there, and they played the piano. He played the piano and played For Good, and they sang there for the first time, and it was so magical. I knew that their relationship, even though it was beginning there, that it was already these two titans of their industries sharing in the new beginning. And I thought that if the camera could capture that, then we had a movie.
Everything rides on the ballroom scene.
Yes, absolutely.
Really everything rides, and it's
Absolutely,
also very silent in a lot of ways, which I love.
Yeah.
What was the process for you trying to deliver that? Because that was the critical scene that sets up the second half of the film.
Well, I always found the show very moving in that moment, even though they're sort of plays as a joke. It's like a funny dance. But when we started to, in the reality of a movie and having your audience buy into it, and the way we were looking at Elphaba, what are her moves, that she actually does have pride in how she moves. When in our rehearsals with Christopher Scott and our team, Comfort and Cynthia together, they found these moves that felt very personal to Cynthia herself. And with Ari, they created this sort of silent moment, and we didn't know it could survive. I mean, in rehearsals, it was 15 minutes long.
Wow.
And but it was so moving. Like it was very compelling that in a giant musical number to have that pause and silence and space it was going to be critical to how this movie played out, more than even how the show uses it.
One musical number question, we'll let you go.
Yes.
The Dancing Through Life is my favorite number.
Yes,
How was it, though, doing on practical sets, giving your actors some space to actually sing live on a real set?
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, you have to have actors who are game, and they're singing live, and they're dancing, jumping up on desks. You have an amazing dance team, and then you have to have your production design to be able to design a giant spinning bookcase. You have to have the means to be able to do that. Then you have to have costume designers who understand how the shoes need to be so that they aren't slipping around everywhere. And then you have to have the rehearsals. And before you've ever built anything, they have to build sort of default things so that you know the spacing and the timing. And we all work together to create. So it's very much a composite of all of our vision together in a way.
So your decision to shift protagonist, basically in the story, how did that affect you in the writing point of view?
It actually opened the story up a lot.
Oh.
You know, it gave us an opportunity to think from another person's perspective, to get in their head, and to then be able to emphasize Elwood's worldview by showing another. It's quite nice to have that contrast.
Obviously, the key relationship is the boys.
Yeah.
You know, that's the heart of the film. I did love the moment where Elwood forgave Turner for not handing him Hattie's vote. How did you view the relationship? Because they felt like normal boys to me.
Yeah. Thanks for these good questions, these nuanced questions. I think we leaned into the power of complexity in a relationship, right? Like, it isn't clear, like, your intentions aren't always open, and you do things that you may apologize for, you may not. How does that affect the other person? Like, these things are murky, and most often never explored, I think, with the type of ambiguity that maybe we did here. Maybe.
Yeah.
So
I did
that's
like
kind
the
of end.
Pride and Prejudice scene where they're talking Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
How important was it to you to have like a scene in the center of the movie that's kind of a little lighter?
Yeah.
And, you know, to kind of break down the tension a little.
Yeah, really important. I think we got that from Coulson. Coulson had that Pride and Prejudice book reference inside the film, and yeah, we looked for any moment for there to be some humor. There's some other ones in there. Hopefully, people caught on.
We talked before about the Hattie scene where she hugs Turner. I also like the end scene where Turner has to break the news to Hattie that Elwood died. Did you always have a bookend that they would actually bookend those two scenes and they would be each other's, you know, bearer of bad news and consolers?
No, we didn't. A lot of the film, especially when you put it in the hand of such, you know, talented and spontaneous and authentic actors, these things happen naturally. We didn't plan a hug in that final scene, and Anjanou just leapt out and grabbed Brandon, who was Turner, and pulled him in, and then that echo became evident.
Wow, that's a good sign for writers that sometimes, you know, on set things could change.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the Feldman Award. This movie addresses actually a very serious issue, of course. What was the process of sifting through all the research and deciding what to include and what not to include?
Yeah, I think it's, trusting one's gut intuition and trying to be as minimal as possible. I think, you know, taking a maximalist approach, which is of course the opposite, was not what we wanted to do. We also didn't want to inundate the film with information. We wanted to be more experience oriented, so we needed to just offer enough to give someone a little taste as to that there were details, that they were real, and then maybe encourage them to do the research after the film.
What was the biggest challenge when writing it? Because you have Aubrey and Macy playing the same character. What was your challenge of kind of structuring the character? Because they got to be similar, but also different stages of their life.
It was actually pretty fun once we cast Aubrey, because I could sort of hear her voice in my head, and I rewrote it to kind of feel like it was her and a younger character. But luckily they had really similar energies, and that's why we cast them together. They don't look anything alike. So the biggest challenge was how do we write some jokes to just have people buy into it, and hopefully they're along for the journey. So that was probably the most challenging part.
What was the challenge of writing a movie where we love Chad from the beginning? Macy, of course, loves Chad, and Aubrey hates him.
Yeah.
What was the challenge of kind of like keeping the audience in the dark a little and wondering what's going on?
That was a tricky one to navigate every step of the way, because we didn't want to give away too much. We had to give away just enough. I would credit my editor, Jen Vecchiarello, for really encouraging me to trust the audience and the edit. And it was a tricky line to walk.
Of course, the moment where Aubrey tells Macy the truth about Chad. What was that process like shooting that scene? That's such a painful scene.
That was a hard scene to shoot because we were losing sunlight. It was really windy. We only had Aubrey for 2 days, basically, to get that scene done. So there was it was a little bit of a panic-filled day, but luckily the actors delivered. The performances were so beautiful. I never cried at the monitors, and Aubrey made me cry with that hug. So it was a team effort for sure. But I knew if I didn't get that scene right.
Right, the movie.
That
was really the whole movie hinged on that one moment to pay off what you did.
I was very aware of that day. My most stressful day for sure.
How fun was it to explore Arkham Asylum and actually Sophia's descent into hell?
Her descent into hell was exhilarating. It was really fun to explore because you haven't really seen that before. So Penguin is great because we got to focus on a lot of the outside perimeter characters, the ones that don't really get their shine. So that was amazing.
So it must have been fun for the whole season writing her arc, setting that up, and actually paying it off in the last episode.
Really fun, especially because his nemesis in this is a woman. So we had to make her his match, his equal. So that was really great.
And finally, how hard was it to type the scene where Oz kills Victor?
Extremely hard. We debated it a lot. Nobody wanted Victor to die, but he had to because Oz is a villain.
And it makes sense of his character.
It
Oz
makes
would
sense.
have to do that if he's going to be who he was. But was that kind of the challenge where you made us fall in love with both their relationship? Was that kind of the hard thing about it at the end?
Yeah, really hard. We fell in love with Victor. We liked them together. They had a close bond. But at the end of the day, Oz is Oz, and Victor saw a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So
you would never do that to a writer's assistant, right?
Absolutely not.
That's what we're trying to get. Abbott Elementary, what was your gut reaction to the first time you read the script and your character?
Wow. My gut reaction was I laughed, I cried, and I looked at the character of Melissa Schimenti and said, that's me, that is mine. There is nobody better in this town to play that. I'm going to go get it.
What's it been like for you? Because you're dealing with serious issues like public education, but in a funny way. How do you feel that you'd be able to balance those two?
Well, in my opinion, there is no better way to make any kind of, not a statement because that sounds too didactic, but to make an impact. There's no better way than through humor. You see, if you message to people and you're hitting them over the head, you're ham-fisting what it is you're trying to say, they're either going to reject it out of hand because it doesn't fit in with what their already held beliefs, or they're just going to be like, this isn't funny, I'm changing the channel. Our show is first and foremost funny. That's what it is, a comedy, a half-hour comedy. It makes people feel good, it makes them feel comforted, they love the characters, want to invite them into their home, and then besides that, it's telling the story of this group of people that are up against it. And I think that is the truth for many people in this country.
All right, I know actors love every scene they do, but is there one specific scene you really liked or a special moment in the series that you're really fond of?
Yes, you know what? I love all of the scenes where us as a core cast trade off lines in rapid fire. The one that I love the most is when we were all telling our conspiracy theories that we believe in. And I think my character is like, now that we're talking about it, I'm not sure the moon landing happened. And it was just crazy lines like that I just was, as they ping off each other and they just increase in outrageousness, I loved it. We have so much fun when we do that. It starts off a little slow, and then like an engine, it picks up, and by the end, we're just slamming the lines around, and it feels like a 30s comedy.
So, all right, we're going back 40 years. What was your reaction when you got cast in Ghostbusters?
Well, first off, it took me forever to get cast in Ghostbusters. I mean, I went through I don't know how many auditions. I had just done a movie with Ivan Reitman called Space Hunter with Peter Strauss. And that character was very different than the character in Ghostbusters. So I think somehow in their minds, so I had to convince them that I wasn't that guy. I'm an actor and I could do this character. But, I was so thankful to get this project. It was a major film with major stars, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis. And I was also very thankful that they were always very receptive and welcoming and inclusive. Can't say about studio, but they were. So, it was a blessing 40 plus years ago. And after all these years, I'm still very, very thankful to be a part of it.
Did you know at the time you had something special when you were working on it?
Well, you know it's special, but you don't think it's special 40 years special. That's real special. I've done a lot of movies that have been received well, but nothing like Ghostbusters.
Now, how does it feel being able to come back to the role after all these years? For the next generation, of kids get to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, so that I'm able to enjoy it. I mean, I'm happy they enjoy it, but to come back to it, and I have grandkids, I have great grandkids. For me to share with them, and I see families sharing across the generations. So that's one of those blessings that comes from God. So.
What was your initial reaction when you first read your script to the bear and your character?
I was intrigued because before I read the script, I read the description of the character, and he's described as a mystery who's lived 1,000 lives. And when I read that, I was like, I don't care what these scripts say, I want in. Because that's such a beautiful way of describing a character. and we've stayed true to form with him in that way. So then I got around to the script, and I was like, wow, this is going to be a ride.
What's been the most fun aspect of playing the characters? Like, any particular trait you like to play, or a scene that maybe it really stood out for you?
I like the fact that we're keeping him very, very silent. It allows me to work without words and to tell story in that way. I like the fact that he's the cat who's the most quiet amidst all of this stuff that's going on. And I think that speaks to his past a lot, what he's been through, how he's able to maintain a grip on himself and his silence.
Is that something you like from writers sometimes, allowing you the space, like words are not always needed, allowing you some space to let you kind of invent the character?
Yeah, I really love writers so much, and I think even when there are not words, there's writing in that as well. Yeah. Knowing what to have the character not say and when to have the character not speak, and to allow that to happen. So I think there's always writing going on, whether they're words or whether it's just space.
Okay, so we'll talk
Are
a
you
little
Matt?
bit- I am Matt. Sorry.
Guys, welcome. Welcome to Moderated by Matt. We're here today at the WGA Awards. And Matt, who are you excited to see?
Obviously you.
Well,
We're
I
actually waiting
appreciate
on
it.
you.
Well, joke's on you. I'm not nominated, buddy.
We just love all the writers and all the actors and all talking screenplay has
Yes.
been one of the most exciting things about us.
I agree.
So what was it about, okay, let's go back to your early days.
Yeah.
What was it about the show that really attracted you initially?
Ghosts?
Yeah.
I saw the British version. I watched 5 minutes of it, and I thought this is really smart. It's obviously like a setup that it's got charm and it's got a lot of humor in it if it's done well. And we took a swing, and we're very, very lucky. I've done many, many pilots that didn't go. So the fact that this one hit and has become sort of the people's champ is really, really validating. Feels good.
What's been most fun this season to play? Obviously, we'll talk before, nothing.
Yeah.
What's been the most fun for you kind of exploring character-wise?
This season was really fun for Jay. I mean, he got to see the ghosts. There was another possession. If you watch the show, his restaurant opened this season, which was very exciting. So a lot of stuff for my character to do, which was a good time.
And that's just good. That's what I like about the show. One season is not the same as the next one.
Right.
You're actually evolving. That's something whereas you want to be able to explore the character much deeper season to season.
Well, yeah, as an actor, for sure, you want something that resembles a character arc. Definitely. Character development, yeah. And our writers do a great job of giving that to us. And I'll just say, they deserve a little recognition from the WGA Awards, okay? They put in hours. 22 episodes is not easy, okay? All these guys getting nominated for 10 episodes. Get out of here.
Or a feature screenplay an hour and a half. Like, come on.
Try 22, you jabronis. I'm in the WGA. I know how hard it is. And I think Ghost deserves a little bit of love.
We'll talk a little screenplay for a second. Highlander.
Yeah.
What was your initial reaction getting cast to that kind of, let's call it a surreal script?
It was a fun script. I had a great time reading it and couldn't wait to do it. I was glad that Arnold turned it down so that I could be considered.
At the time, do you know that it was something special?
No.
That it would really grab the audience?
Well, it was special for me because it was one of my first gigs. So
Oh.
Yeah. So I was real happy to do it. Yeah.
And also, it led you some other great work with Frank Darabont.
Yeah. Frank.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Slightly different role.
Yeah, a little bit different.
But a really intense character. What was your views when you first read the script to your character? For that
Well,
one?
everybody loved that script. I have to tell you, it made the rounds in Hollywood, and everybody was dying to do it because it was just so beautifully written. The pen to paper was just gorgeous. We had to change it a little bit, I think, from what we first read, but not that much. And it was a lovely shoot. It was shot near my hometown in Ohio, at Mansfield, Ohio. So, it was kind of perfect for me. I also got married during that show. So, yeah.
Fond memories.
Yeah.
Dark film, but fond memories.
Yeah. It's a very meaningful film to me.
All right, so let's go back in time a little. What was your initial reaction like when you became a Fraggle Rock team member?
Oh my God. So I was already working at Hudson, and I'm a huge Henson head. I think Labyrinth was never out of my VHS player. So I was working on an animated show called Harriet the Spy, and heard little rumblings that Fraggle Rock was coming back. And I, through strength of will and hopefully charisma, I got into the room and have been so grateful ever since. 2 seasons strong, and so proud of it.
We'll talk a little about your episode. What I like about it is you're confronting issues of today.
Yeah.
Identity. How does it feel being able to explore these issues and reach children who, are not exposed to it enough?
Well, what I love is we're continuing the legacy of Jim Henson, because the 80s show absolutely talked about issues of the day that were pertinent to families, to children, things that were scaring them. They went into it. They talked about communism and life and death. So it behooved us to continue that legacy. Our first season, we talked about issues of consent, about environmental accountability, and try not to go over anyone's heads. We try to write for everybody, young and old. Hopefully we're not losing any adults, and they're finding us very funny. But yeah, we don't want to not take this moment to talk about something important.
Obviously, this had to take a lot of research.
Yes.
What was the biggest challenge of sifting through all the research and what you would actually include in the film?
Yeah, well, it was a profound amount of research. It was a years-long process. I mean, the first challenge was learning how to write Belfast dialogue without speaking in a Belfast accent myself. So there's a lot with the language that I had to do. Right. And I would say the biggest challenge, there were 2 challenges. Sometimes you have too much information, and it's about learning what to cut, and then also sometimes you don't have enough. So there are certain sequences where, particularly because it's a show about the IRA, where the organization is built around secrecy and a code of silence, it meant that you don't know what was said in every room. You can't possibly. And so at some point you have to trust that you've done enough research so you can feel like you can go and write.
Now, obviously, you then have to take all this research and fact and put it through the character's point of view. What was the challenge? Distilling all this important information, but making it from the character perspective.
That was actually the most important thing. That was the guiding principle. Everything inside the character's tight perspective would be something that I would want to use. And then if it was outside of their perspective, even if it was like a seismic event in Irish history, I was more likely to cut it, or we were more likely to cut it, because it just if it didn't directly affect the characters, then it wasn't part of the story we were telling.
And for you, a lot of the younger generation does not know about the Troubles.
That's right.
How do you feel like now you're actually bringing awareness to what actually happened?
I mean, I think it's hugely important. I think there's a culture of silence in Ireland. There's also a culture of silence in England, right, to a certain degree, because they don't really like talking about what happened either, right? And I think we had a number of cast members who were English, who said were so drawn to the show because they hadn't heard about this stuff in school. And I think if people can gain awareness about what happened, I mean, one of the guiding principles of the show is that it's important to open the door to the past, even if it's painful, even if it's traumatic. It's kind of the only way you can heal.